Hey guys, I'm Misty Buck, president of Miss Inc., and I want to welcome you to another Marketing Monday. This is actually our last one for the year. The holidays are coming up. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I hope you guys are too. But anyhow, I'm super excited because we are actually ending the year on a high note with our guests today. So I have Deanne Mora. Did I get that right?
You did get that right. Thank you.
She is the founder and CEO of Zen Change Marketing. And we're going to talk about all about post-pandemic marketing today. What should you be doing in 2022? All that really awesome stuff. So I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time.
To be here.
Thank you so much for being here with us. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about Zen Change and we'll get into it.
Well, sure. Well, a little background on me before Zen. I started my career about 35 years ago working with a number of Fortune 500 companies. So I've consulted with 30 of the Fortune 500 all over the world.
No
Great
pressure.
Experiences, no pressure, right? But being on a plane every week, I can tell you, gets a little bit much. So, after I was doing that for about 26 years, I thought, you know what? I think I'd like to do something a little different. I should launch my own business. But, I was thinking, well, what should I do? And one of the most fun things that I think I had done to date was in my undergrad, I led the business consulting program for my university. And it was just so much fun helping all of these little businesses. And it was so much more impactful. It's more difficult to move the needle when you deal with a big company.
Yes.
So, I thought all of that experience that I've had with corporate America, that could be really valuable to small business owners. And so as it turned out to be, so it was really exciting.
And here you are.
Zen Change.
Yeah. So, and when did you start Zen Change?
Well, so it's been 9 years. And
wow, congratulations.
Well, thank you. We actually go to market now under 3 brands. So we have Masterclass 4 Marketing, which is the number 4. And that's our DIY, learn how to do your own marketing. And then, if you need to get some coaching, then you can book a coaching session to dive in a little bit more. And then Zen Change is our done for you. So very much a menu of marketing services, everything from build a website, maintain it, SEO, run your social media, graphic design, writing newsletters, pretty much all of marketing,
right?
But very much targeted at small business. And then we have the Alchemy Firm, which is kind of a higher end fractional CMO strategy type service where we typically work more with startups and I would say still small, but more toward the mid-sized businesses that are making a pivot.
Wow.
We try to cover
that's
all
a lot.
bases.
Yeah, that's a lot of bases. That's a lot of bases. That really is. I mean, I'm like a fraction of that space, and I'm happy there because that's a lot. Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk it. So with all this experience that you come with, we were talking a little bit off camera about how much stuff has changed post COVID. I don't know. Yes. I'm using that. We're going to manifest it, right? So I'm using post COVID, at least post 2020 and almost post 2021. So where are we at now? Like, what are you seeing now with the small business community in terms of all these changes that have taken place?
I think it's interesting because, once we were a few months into the pandemic, I think we all knew that we were in for some pretty significant social changes.
Yes.
We just didn't really know yet what they would look like. Mm-hmm. And so obviously the first wave was every small business owner went, oh my God, I got to get online. And so there was this massive rush to digital.
Right.
And then you had in parallel with that, a lot more focus on DIY. So there were more businesses, more consumers who wanted to learn how to do different things themselves.
Right.
And so we had a lot of that happening. So, I think what's happened now in this next wave that we're in is the corporations were a little bit slower to make the shift because it takes longer to turn the big shifts around, but they all went all in on digital as well. So now we're seeing so much more competition in terms of some of the traditional channels because you have a lot more money in there. We also have seen the rise of the creator economy that I know you're familiar with. So it's now a very viable career for someone to be a creator, whether they are a podcaster or they're a musician or an artist or they're a writer, that they can create for a living and they can actually do quite well at it. So if you're a small business owner, that's kind of a lot that is out there in your space.
So let's talk
pumped out content.
So let's dig into the creator space for a little bit, because I think that is something that's pretty brand new. I think people are not really, I think the average small business owner is just trying to get by day, doing everything that they have to do to keep their small business running, right? So they
Yeah.
probably not up on these trends and these terms. So can you dig in a little bit on what is a creator? You started to talk about it, and sort of how are they making money? Because this is going to lead us to a point in how to use this as a small business, right? How to leverage these creators in your plan, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Well, so a creator, as I mentioned, can basically anyone who is putting out any form of content, but what they basically do is they put out content for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not a small business owner who is going on YouTube and creating videos. They are someone who might be, I mean, you see people who are building YouTube channels, and they may be monetizing partly through ad spend.
Mm-hmm.
You see artists who are building their audience directly. And when I say artists, I mean whether they're like actual art musicians, any form of artist. And so there's this trend toward disintermediation where we're really cutting out the middleman when it comes to monetization. So there's a piece of that where you can get sponsored by a brand, for example. And that's obviously an opportunity to try to connect with some of these micro influencers and to get your brand out there. But really diving a little bit more ahead, although not in the too far distant future, now we've got all the Web 3.0 capabilities where, artists can monetize their content through NFTs. And
which, if you don't know what that is, like, how do you easily explain an NFT? I mean, I'm having a hard time explaining this. Do you have an easy way of explaining it?
So I think one of the best explanations I've heard actually came from Gary Vee, which is, of course, is if you're a gamer, you're buying upgrades to your avatar already. So this idea of buying something digital that it has value is something that makes sense. But an NFT, which stands for non-fungible token, basically is a way of attaching a unique digital identifier to anything that is, whether it's a JPEG, whether it's a video, with the idea that it's visible because it's sitting on the blockchain. So we would, if I buy your NFT, it's going to sit in my wallet and everybody's going to see that I have it. So let's take an example of, in the old days, we used to go to concerts. We would buy the ticket stub. We'd save the ticket stub in a shoebox. We would, maybe we'd get a shirt.
I still do those things.
I know, right? We'd have a backstage pass, and all of those things would be visible memories of the fact that, it would be really cool that we were tied to that artist right at the beginning. Well, every one of those things can now be digital. So now we can assign value to that. It can be traded. It can be displayed.
So the way I understand it too is there's like unique numbers associated with things. So like I don't want to get too complicated here, but just to have I want us to share a general knowledge of this, because I think that you're 100% right with this Web 3.0. I think at least knowing what's coming and what's going on, we're seeing artists that are selling their digital artwork. And you can own a piece of that, but you own it in the digital space. You have the unique number to it. It's unique to you. It's your thing, which is kind of like hard to wrap your brain around. But there are creators selling tweets. So they'll tweet something and they can go ahead and sell that as an NFT. Like, it's nuts. So I think just being aware of these things in the digital space.
Absolutely. And being aware that there's communities that are building up around this. So what we currently view as social media over the next few years is going to start to evolve. So that's something that, and again, if you're an average small business owner, it's still a little ahead of the curve for you, but you need to have your eyes open and be very aware that that's out there and that's happening, and that the general direction toward that is, in the meantime, creating a lot more competition in some of the traditional digital spaces.
Yeah. The competition is fiercer than ever. So
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the things that with the competition that's going on is, the algorithms are always changing. That's nothing new, but they're just constantly screwing around with stuff. So I don't know if I'm sure you saw that. So Instagram, for instance, is like, oh, we're going to start showing things in chronological order again. Not exactly. Like, it's not just going to automatically, it's bananas, right? So there's always like an asterisk next to things. And then the annoying thing is like about algorithms is like, oh, we're going to show your content, but only if it's popular enough and we think people want to see it. And we're like, well, how do you, You know what I mean? This
How
is
do
why
you
we say it's
how do
pay to
you get
play.
it popular
If I
enough,
can't get
right?
it popular because you're not showing it to people, what do I do? So this is like a frustration that
Absolutely.
business
Yeah.
owners have. We've seen the changes with Apple's and iOS. We've seen the changes that are coming with Google. So I'm going to take a deep breath here and let you explain what's going on with that and how business owners can get around that and still get their message out digitally.
Well, there's been, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of changes in the algorithm. There's been a lot more focus on privacy, which, for the record, I'm a huge supporter of digital privacy. But what that's done is, given that some of the pressures that Facebook is under, if you're a marketer, you can't target as well as you could. You can't use certain language in ads that might have a stronger call to action. So there's more limitations when it comes to using those channels. And then, as you mentioned, the iOS update. So basically the default setting is now on your iPhone, don't track me. So it used to be that you would go to somebody's website and then we knew who you were. So we could follow you around online with some ads to kind of nurture you and remind you to come back and buy. Same thing with going to your social media. Well, now those traditional marketing channels are really locked down a lot more. So now I'm not saying don't do pay-per-click, because it still does need to be part of your strategy. But now as marketers, we have to get creative. And we have to look at how else are we going to reach these audiences. So, I always like to come back to really know your personas, really know your target audience. Where are they? Right? And that's where we need to be. So maybe they are looking at specific streaming services and we need to be there. Maybe there are, online forums and conversations happening. Obviously we've seen the rise of Clubhouse. We've seen a lot more focus on people going to Reddit and Quora and Discord to have conversations and to seek advice from the community. Well, if that's where they're going to get advice, then if you're a small business owner, you need to be there too.
Right.
If that's where your audience is. So it really comes down to, we really need to know our audience.
So let's talk about that, because there's so many different channels out there that, like you just mentioned some that I don't even know if everyone knows what those are. And so I feel like we get this question so much, right? Like there's so many different, it's overwhelming. There's so many different places. How do I know where my audience even is? So how would you answer that?
So, first of all, actually talk to your audience, right? Let's, try to get some sense as to where they're spending time. And then realistically, you have to test. That I think the whole rapid A/B testing strategy for marketing is going to be much, much more important, because in parallel with all of that, people's attention is shifting. So what worked 6 months ago might not work now, might not work 6 months from now. So we can't really get stuck in our marketing plan and say, this is what we're moving forward with for the next year. We really need to iterate and look at different channels and make sure that we can measure the performance and then see where we want to shift our spend.
Right. And I don't know if you probably can't see it because of the camera angle, but I'm starting to get gray up here. And this is why.
I'm way past you.
This is why, because no, but you get what I'm saying? Like, it's so, 100%. It's fun because it kind of like keeps you on your toes. But I think for somebody who's not, and my point in that is this, that, we're in marketing and it can get overwhelming, right? And you're constantly, there's pressure. You're trying to stay on your toes. Where is your audience? What's really converting? I can't really track conversions like I used to, because now this is blocked, but like there's so many different things. So I think as an average small business owner, when you're trying to figure these things out, it can feel overwhelming. But I think like that, number one, I think it's okay, because we're all trying to figure this out. There's no perfect formula solution. I think if Deanna or I had that, we'd be like billionaires.
There is no secret sauce.
There's no secret sauce.
You have to understand basic strategy and then, focus and test and just continue to improve.
Right. Yeah. No. And I agree with that. So let's say I'm a small business owner, which I am, but let's say I'm a small business owner and I'm trying to figure out I'm listening to all this and I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm totally overwhelmed, or I'm a DIYer. I need to kind of figure this out for 2022. Where do I start?
Well, the good thing is that behind all of everything digital, it's still human beings. And we all still have human emotions, human desires, human wants. And so it really comes back to some of the basics. So if you, regardless of what channel you're going to go out and test, people are going to come back and they're going to check you out. They're going to check you out on your website. They're going to check you out on your social media. So they want to see content there that is compelling. So start with the basics. Start with your website, because that's really the foundation to your marketing. Make sure it's telling your story in a way that somebody lands there, they immediately know what you do, what's in it for them, that you have the credibility to be the one to help them.
Right.
And also, by the way, the technical part of your website is it better load really quickly on mobile and on desktop.
Yes.
And it better look good on mobile and have an experience that is very conducive to somebody just connecting with you on a mobile device. And then your social. So be on social. Use as many of the ways that social provides you to connect. So, if you're on Instagram, you need to be doing reels, you need to be doing posts, you need to be doing stories, you need to be doing IGTV. I mean, put it all out there, because it not only it makes the algorithms happier, but it makes people happier, because people consume content different ways. I might like to scroll through my feed while I'm at work. You might like to look at stories. And so, depending on what we prefer, you have to provide that content. So that's really, I would say, the foundation, regardless of anything else that you do digitally with your marketing.
Yeah. So I love that. I think that's a really good advice. Just go back to basics. So let's say, again, I'm that small business owner. I'm looking at 2022. I'm totally overwhelmed. I think the very first step is, how is your foundation? Are you do a website check, do a brand check. I think to your point about human emotions. So I was talking to, what is your opinion on this? Because I was talking to somebody about this last week, and we're working on their branding, right? Because I also do like coaching and consulting, and it was like, he was like pulling stuff from other people's websites that he liked, but it was like very cold, like corporate language. And this is a very like warm, bubbly, outgoing individual. And I was like, well, none of this sounds like you.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're creating your messaging strategy, right, how important is that it has that personality? And
it's critical. I mean, you're just like you as a human, you have what we call your voice, your way of speaking, your way of communicating. So does your brand. And so if you want to go to market as the warm, bubbly, approachable brand, and that's your part of your differentiation, then that needs to really be pervasive in every aspect of your story, whether it's how you do your videos or the type of language that you use when you're writing copy. Because if you sound like everyone else, you're not going to stand out from anyone else.
Exactly. Exactly. So, all right. So we have that. We're going to get back to basics. We're going to do the foundational stuff. We're going to start small. And then I need to know, like, what now what am I looking at for 2022? Yeah.
Well, I think the next step really also hasn't changed from previous years. And that is, you need to network your little heart out. So as you're looking at testing all of these other possibilities for reaching your audience, you need to be making connections that will continue to bring in revenue. So go out to networking events, join groups, look to meet people, and don't just do the cocktail party type of networking where you go out and you shake hands and you smile and you leave. And then you go, well, I didn't get any business from that.
Right.
You need to get people's cards, find a way to make a connection with them and follow up. It's those individual conversations that you'll have after the main networking event where you can ideally start to build some referral partners that they'll think of you when somebody says, oh, do you know someone who does X? Well, yes, actually, I do know someone.
Right.
And when you start to do a lot of networking, it really becomes part of the value that you can provide your clients, because you become the go-to person for, who should I ask to do X? And you're always the person who says, oh, I got a guy or I got a gal. Right. And then that's tremendously valuable for your clients. So do that in order to make sure that you're building your business, because that's a tremendous foundation. And then on top of that, now you can start to test different digital channels of where is your content going to connect the most and get the most attention.
I love that. So how can someone find... So again, I'm just going off of questions that I get asked all the time, right? So like, how can if someone is trying to find out what the multiple channels are that could possibly be available to them, where do they even start to find that, right? Like if let's say I'm a small business owner here in South Miami, and I own an ice cream shop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do I even go to find out where other people might be talking about ice cream, for example?
Well, I mean, you can, certainly there'll be some of the traditional social media channels that you'll already know are out there.
Right.
But then go to some of these other channels, go poke around on Quora and Reddit, and, go jump into Clubhouse and just experience some of these other channels. I'm not saying you can't still look at building a community on Facebook. Yes, absolutely. Look to do all of that. Although Facebook, as you and I know, has become pretty much of a pay to play platform,
pretty much,
where you're not just going to put out content and people are going to find you, but you can promote your content. You can join groups. LinkedIn is tremendously important.
It's huge. It's more and more important than ever. I feel like. Do you feel that way? I feel like it's becoming increasingly important. I'm getting more leads from LinkedIn than I ever have before, personally. So do you find that?
Absolutely. I think that they're the two channels where you can still get really good organic traction are LinkedIn and TikTok. So don't think TikTok is just about the latest cool dances that the 13-year-olds are doing. TikTok is very much about business, and it's the algorithm, as you know, is incredibly addictive. And so, if you can nail the right type of content, you get a lot of exposure. And those are a couple of channels where you can still get good exposure without doing ads.
Right.
You can still get good exposure on any of the forums without doing ads. I mean, you can absolutely test ads and boost content, but you don't necessarily have to. Whereas if you're dealing with more on the Facebook, Instagram, you pretty much need to be paying to get your content out there.
Right. And those can be good ways of drawing leads too, through those ads, even though, again, it's becoming more challenging. Like, I don't know if you remember, but you could like boost something for $5 and get
those were the days.
Those were the days. Now we're very, very different world.
Yeah.
But
learning those algorithms, as you mentioned, is really important. So, little tip for your followers, but LinkedIn actually prioritizes followers of hashtags over followers of people. So do your research and see which hashtags are getting more attention on LinkedIn and use that in your content, but don't spam hashtags. Don't go out there.
Yeah, we don't want to do like 52 hashtags. Put a few, 2 to 3.
That's it.
And then the next post, you can put in some of the other ones. Yep. You don't have to
mix it up.
Just mix it up and just and I think be genuine with it too, right? I think people have used LinkedIn in the past strictly as like a resume or only posting felt like really cold. It's starting to feel more personal now, where people are sharing more personal anecdotes or more personal stories or asking more questions. And
I think that's another factor that happened really with the pandemic, is I think in many respects, it's really made us more cognizant of our humanity. And, we're seeing now, in the trend of the Great Resignation as well, that people really started to
start sweating.
Right. I mean, there's so many implications of that for business, just in terms of hiring and retention. But one of the interesting things is that as people really started to question, is this what I want to be doing for a living? Do I want to work for a company that I hate? Do I want to, put myself potentially at risk by being in a very public, service type setting? A lot of these individuals have decided to launch small businesses. So guess what? More competition as well. So it's another factor that we're seeing that's changing the landscape.
Right. Well, I mean, we're seeing along those lines more freelancing opportunities, more like people, it's changing dramatically. And so I think that's a really interesting point, because let's say they decided, I'm going to quit my job and instead I'm going to be a content creator, for example. But I think that's not to be something to be feared, right? So I think as a business owner, you kind of, especially smaller ones, you start to freak out when these changes. I do. You start to freak out when these changes come to be, right? Because you're like, what do I do? But I think really what we need to be, and this is my opinion, I hope you give me yours, but it's collaboration, right? So like, how do I find the right content creator to collaborate with and use that to help get that visibility.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and there's obviously, you can pay a lot for PR platforms where you can find certain influencers.
Pay a lot. Yeah.
A lot, but you can also just, go in your circle and search. So put yourself in the shoes of your target audience, and just go online, search for how you would like to be found, and see what comes up. See who's putting out a lot of content. See who's really making a difference. And it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to, although it'd be nice, get Kim Kardashian to be, posting about your brand.
Right.
But, obviously she's going to want a lot of money for that. But even some of these micro influencers. So I think what we're seeing is also a shift toward the quality of the audience more than the quantity.
Correct.
So if you have an email list and more people are opening your email, better. If you have a smaller social media following, but more people are engaging, better.
Right. Yeah, especially when you get into the algorithms and what people see and all that kind of nonsense. So we only have a few minutes left here. I can't believe the time is like just really flying by. So like, what are some additional tips that you would share going into 2022?
Well, I think going into 2022, it's a year where we really need to question everything. But don't forget some of the foundation. So some of the things that we talked about, make sure that you really know your target audience, know where they are, know what is going to get them excited to work with you, and really put yourself in their shoes. And content obviously is still very important. Yes, we talked about the creator economy, but you still need to be putting out a lot of content. So you're going to need to do a lot of testing, and just, don't get caught up in some of the traditional way that we used to market, and only go down the path of AdWords and only go down the path of Facebook and Instagram ads. We're all going to need to get a little creative this coming year.
Right.
But don't forget some of the basic blocking and tackling. Network, make sure your brand looks good.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I love that so much. So again, how can people reach you if they're interested in one of these programs that you offer? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can go to our website, zenchange.com, or follow me on my Instagram at Marketing Strategy Gal.
Marketing Strategy Gal. I like it. I like it. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. Any last words, Dan? Anything we didn't cover?
Just keep going.
Just
Don't
keep
give
going.
up. The
I would agree with
entrepreneurial
that.
tenacity just cannot be beaten.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with that. So just have the discipline, just keep going. Even when it feels like nothing is happening. We've talked about this before, that you might not be getting the necessarily clicks or likes, but people are paying attention. They are watching. They will reach out to you. So just keep going and have the faith,
have a
right?
great product or service. Believe in what you're
doing.
doing.
And when you do that, it sells itself,
Absolutely.
right? So all right, everybody. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you again for joining us. I cannot believe we've gone through a whole year of shows already here in 2021. And I am so looking forward to 2022. I think it's going to be an awesome, awesome year for all of us. And even though there's always changes going, keep in mind, change is constant, no matter where you are and what you're doing, what year you're in, pandemic, no pandemic, whatever it is, change is constant. So take a deep breath. It's going to be all right. And we're going to just continue to move forward. So with that, I want to thank you guys again for being here. Again, thank you for joining me every week. We will see you in the new year. Deanne, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You were awesome today. Really, really helpful tips. And we will see you guys soon. Make it a great day. Happy holidays. Have a blessed one. All that. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next year.